Welcome back to Grim Reality Locks. I am your host, the Mysterious Snowman. Here, we document the glitches, the anomalies, and the terrifying encounters the society tries to ignore. If you have wandered in from the dark, make sure to verify your existence by clicking the subscribe button and turning on notifications. We are building a community of the aware, and we want you with us. They say the Appalachian Mountains are the oldest mountains on Earth. Geologists will tell you they used to be taller 10 FLLs before time crowned them down. But the locals will tell you something different. They will tell you that these mountains are old enough to have developed a consciousness. They are old Enos Tolno when you do not belong. There are rules here. Never whistle at night because something might whistle back. If you hear a baby crying in the deep woods, walk the other way. And if you hear your name called from the tree line, do not answer. Tide, we have free accounts from those who broke the rules or simply found themselves on the wrong side of the veil in the deep backwoods. This is entry number 1. The switchback. I have been driving trucks for the better part of a decade. A long haul, short haul, hazardous major rolls, you name it. I am comfortable behind the wheel. The hum of a diesel engine is usually enough to put my mind at ease, but it will never drive through West Virginia at night again. Not after what happened in last November. I was working for a logistics company that specialized in Oregon overnight deliveries. It was a Tuesday, and I was running a route from Charleston, West Virginia, heading east toward the Virginia border. I was in a 26-foot box truck, not a full 18-wheeler, which gave me a little more flexibility with the roads, but not much. It was around 15 a minute. The coffee I had picked up at a gas station 2 hours ago had turned cold and bitter, sitting in the cup holder like sludge. My eyes were burning. The radio was scanning through static, finding nothing but the occasional burst of a religious sermon or faint country hole, forbidden and out like a ghosting lane. I was on Interstate 64 when a massive accident shut down all eastbound lanes. I could see the red and blue light splashing against the low-hanging clouds miles ahead. I was dead stopped. My GPS loader standalone unit mounted to my dashboard. Chirp! It calculated a detour. Suggested I take an exit coming up in half a mile, navigate some state routes, and reconnect with highway 200 miles past the crash site. It looked like a standard week. I took the exit while thinking twice. At first, the road was fine. It was a twirling path road with yellow lines, winding through the foothills. But West Virginia roads are deceptive. They lull you into a false sense of security before they turn on you. After about 20 minutes, the ZPAC voice, sounding robotic and distorted, told me to turn left onto Trinity Road 9. Turned. The pavement immediately turned into gravel. The yellow lines disappeared. The trees, which had been set back from the road, suddenly crowded in. Mesolics and pines leaned over the track, their branches scraping atop of my box truck with a sound like fingernails on a chopper. I checked the GPS. It showed a squiggly blue line cutting through a vast expanse of gray. Nothing. No towns, no landmarks. Just the woods. I slowed down to 20 miles spur hard. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating swirling dust and moths, but beyond that, it was pitch black. The darkness in Appalachia is different. It is heavy. It feels like it has weight to it, pressing against the glass. I had been on this gravel road for maybe 15 minutes when I saw the first landmark. It was an old, rusted-out red tractor sitting in a dish on the right side of the right. It looks like it had been there since the 1950s. Flies were growing from the wheel spokes. As he passed it, I noticed a single, rotting fence post standing next to it. I thought nothing of it, just rolled decayed. The road began to descend. It was a series of sharp sweepbacks, dropping deeper uphill stealthily that he could not see. My ears pop up from the pressure change. The air growing colder. I rolled down my window, aiming to get some fresh air, and the smell hit me. It did not smell like pine or earth. It smelled like standing water and copper. Like old pennies. I navigated another sharp hairpin turn, swinging the chalk wide so the back wheels would not slide into the... 10 minutes later, I saw it again. On the right side of the road sat a rusted-out red tractor. Vines in the wheels, rotting fence posts next to it. I slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded on the loose gravel before coming to a halt. I stared at the tractor. My heart did a weird flutter in my chest. I lifted the gam PS. I had been driving in a straight ascent. I had not turned around. I had not circled back. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a common brand of tractor. Maybe this farmer bought two of them and dumped them in similar spots. It was a coincidence. It had to be. Thrusted the gas and kept going, but my grip on the steering wheel was wifled. The silence of the woods felt louder now. The scraping of the branches on the roof sounded aggressive, trying to get in. I drove for another 10 minutes. The road kept spiraling down, down, down. It felt like I was driving toward the center of the earth, and my headlights caught the reflection of metal head. My stomach dropped. I stopped the truck completely that time. Here it was. The red tractor. The Vides defense post. But this time, it was different. The first two times, the tractor had been in the ditch, maybe 10 feet from the road. This time, it was sitting right on the shoulder, mere inches from the gravel track. It had moved closer. And there was something else on the seat of the tractor. In the previous two sightings, the seat had been empty, just a rusted metal pan. Now there was a shape. It looked like a bundle of rags, or maybe a scarecrow. It was slumped over the steering wheel of the tractor. I did not want to pass it. Every instinct in my reptilian brain was screaming at me to reverse, to back up the mountain, to get the hell out of there. But begging a 24 up a steep, winding gravel road in pitch darkness was sidey. I had to go forward. I locked the doors. I rolled the window up tight. I reached under my seat and grabbed the tire and I kept there, sitting on my lap. I eased the truck forward, crawling at 5 miles per hour. As I got closer to the tractor, the bundle of rags shifted. It was not the wine. There was now wind down here in this valley. The air was dead still. As the cab of my truck came parallel with the tractor, I refused to look. I stared straight ahead at the gravel illuminated by my high beams. But it could feel eyes on me. I could feel a gaze so excessive felt like heat on the side of my face. I passed it. I actually did sacky breath that fogged up the windshield. I checked the rearview mirror. The red tractor was gone. Not behind me in the distance. Just gone. The road behind me was empty. And the GPS screen flickered. The blue line disappeared. The screen turned a solid bright red red. A voice clear as day, not robotic at all, spoke from the device. It whispered, "Turn around." I screamed. I literally screamed in that and became in. I ripped the power cord of the gimbal out of the dashboard socket. I stomped on the gas pedal. The truck rat, the big tire spinning in the gravel before finding traction. I did not care about the curves and moors. I did not care about sliding off the edge night. I just wanted out. I drove like a maniac for the gap how they felt like an horror, but called in 10 minutes. The road finally flattened out. The gravel turned back into pavement. I saw a street lamp, then other, and a gas station. I burst out of the woods and onto a main road near Lewisburg. I was shaking so bad I had to pull over into the gas station lot. I sat there for an hour, just breathing, with the cabin light on. I looked at the odometer. From the moment I left the highway to the moment I arrived the gas station, only 4 miles had registered on the desk. I had been driving for nearly an hour. I had gone down 3 levels of a valley, but the truck thought we had only gone 4 miles. He looked at the side of the truck the next morning. On the passenger side, there were scratches, deep gouges in the metal, but they were not from tree branches. They were parallel lines, 4 of them. Legs and fingers had dragged along the side of the box as it drove past the tractor. I don't take shortcuts anymore. If the highway is closed, I pull over and I wait. I don't care how late to delivery is. Because you know that in those valleys, the roads do not always lead to where you want to go. Sometimes they lead to things that have been waiting a very long time for a visitor. This entry number 2. The Grey Man of Trail 4. Here is a specific kind of silence that you only find in the deep Appalachian backcountry. It is not the absence of noise. It is the absence of light. It is the feeling that the forest is holding its breath, waiting for you to make a mistake. I am an experienced hiker. I have known the Pacific Crest Trail and chunks of the Appalachian Trail. I am not easily spooked. Last October, he decided to use Dial, a solo weekend trip in the Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. I wanted to get away from the city, away from cell service, and just reset my brain. I parked my car at a trailhead of a gravel service rated around 3 p.m. on a Friday. My plan was to hike about 6 miles and set up a dispersed camp, which means camping outside of designated campground and spend 2 nights there. The hike in was melted. The leaves were turning that burning red and orange, the air was crisp, and the sky was a piercing blue. I reached my target area around 5:30 p.m. It was a small clearing near a creek, surrounded by dense rhododendrons. If you have never hiked in the south, rhododendron thickets are like walls. They are twisted, tangled messes of branches that you cannot see through and definitely cannot walk through. I set up my tent, a small one-person lightweight tracker. I ate my freezerized dinner as the sun went down. The moment the sun slipped behind the ridge, the temperature dropped 20 degrees, and the darkness fell like a curtain. I crawled into my sleeping bag around 9 p.m. I read about my headlamp for a while, then turned the light off and drifted to sleep. The sound of the creek near me was soothing. White noise. I woke up at Moodfair exactly to 14 a.m. I know the time because I checked my watch immediately. I did not wake up because I was cold. I did not wake up because I had to use the bathroom. I woke up because I heard the sound of a zipper. It was closed. It sounded like the fly of my tent being slowly unzipped it. I froze. Me heart hammered against my roof so hard it thought it would shake the ground. My first thought was that I had forgotten to lock the car and someone had followed me. A buddy was 6 miles deep in the woods. I listened. The zipping sound stopped. I lay there in the pitch black, straining my ears. The creek was still bubbling, but over the top of it, I heard breathing. It was heavy, wet breathing, and it was coming from right outside the thin nylon wall of my tent, mere inches from my head. "Hello," he called out. My voice cracked. I sounded pathetic. Is that a ranger? I was praying it was a ranger. Maybe I was camping in a restricted zone. Maybe I was in trouble. I would take a fine over the sphere any day. Here was no answer. Just the breathing. It sounded congested, like the lungs were full of flight. Then the footsteps started. They were chaligged footsteps, bipedal, heavy, crunch, crunch, crunch. Whether it began to circle my tent. It was walking slowly, deliberately, I tracked the sound as it moved from the head of my tent, down the left side, past my feet, and up the right side. It was pacing, like a predator inspecting a trap. I reached it for my knife. It was a small folding tactical knife I kept in my boot. My hand was shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I gripped the handle, pointing the blade at the darkness. "I have a weapon," I yelled. Back of F. The footsteps stopped again, right near my head. Then a voice spoke, but it was not a voice. It sounded like a recording being played back at the wrong speed. It was high-pitched and garbled. It said, "I have a weapon." By tap. It was my voice. It was a perfect mimicry of what I had just said, but stripped of all emotion. Just raw sound data being spat back at me. My blood ran cold. I felt of primal terrors that I cannot explain. This was not a person, and it was not a bear. Bears do not mimic you. I did not say another word. I glanced my hand over my mouth to slow my breathing. I curled into the tightest ball I could manage in my sleeping bag. For the next 3 hours, the thing circled my tent. It would walk a few laps, then stop, sometimes, and would brush against the tan fabric. I could hear the nylon swashing as something leathery ran along the side. At one point, I saw the silhouette of a hand pressed against the tent wall, illuminated by the faint moonlight filtering through the trees. It was not a human hand. The fingers were too long, way too long, and there were too many of them. I counted 6 distinct pressure points pressing into the fabric before I squeezed my eyes shut. Around 4 minutes, the psychological torture changed. It started whistling. It was not a toot, essential tie. It was a single, flat note. A low, monotonous whistle that went on for 30 seconds, stopped for breath, and then started again. It was the sound of something trying to imitate a human whistling but not understanding the concept of melody. I lay there, tears streaming down my face, gripping that knife and nail my knuckles turned white side. I stay waiting for the tent to wrap open. I call a pity waiting for the violet, but it never came. As the sky began to turn that dark, bruised purple of right on, the whistling stopped. I heard the footsteps one last time. They walked away from the tent, toward the creek, and then they just stopped it. No fading out into the distance. Just stepping, and then silence. I waited until the sun was fully up around 8 a.m. before I unzipped the tent. I burst out, knife in hand, ready to fight. The clearing was empty. The woods were silent. The birds were starting to chirp as if nothing had happened. It looked at the ground around me 10. The soil was soft, campered in list litter. Here should have been footprints. Here should have been wood marks or paw prints from something circling me for hours. There was no. The leaves were undisturbed. I packed my chem and regard time, numb it. I did not even bother filtering water. I just shoved everything if I till I tactically ran the 6 miles back to my car. I did not stop until I was on the highway, doing 80 miles per hour back toward the villages. When he got home, I unpacked my bag. As he shook out my tent to clean it, I noticed something near the top seam, right where my head had been resting. Here was a smear. It looked like gray clay or mud, but when I touched it, it was greasy. It smelled like rancid meat. I threw the tent away. I burned the clothes I was wearing. I did some research later, or looked up legends of the area. I found stories about the Gray Man of the Mountains, a spirit or creature that stalks hikers who are sewer. They say it feeds on fear. They say it mimics you, try and get you to open the door to invite it in. I don't know what was outside my tent that night, but I know one thing for sure. It wanted me to unzip that door. And if I had, I is not think you wouldn't be here recording this log today. This is entry number 3, Dip Creek Cabin in Eastern Kentucky. The poverty and the beauty sit right next to each of the. You have got multi-million-dollar vacation homes sitting on ridges that overlook abandoned coal mines and shacks that have not had or known to pull a motor but since the 10. I was broke when I was 24, fresh into college, with the drill was not using and drumming in depth. When he sold the listing on a gig after a long-term house visitor, I jumped at it. The pay was ridiculous. $2,000 for 2 weeks. All I had to do was watch a renovated cabin near Pikeville while the owner, a man named Mr. Vance, went to Roba. I drove up there on a Monday. The cabin was incredible. It was modern, and a friend designed a visive deck and floor to selling glass windows, the litter over the belly. But as soon as I pulled into the gravel driveway, I felt exposed. The woods here did not gently border the property. I loomed over it. The trees were tall, thick walnuts and oaks that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. Mr. Benz was packing his car when he arrived. He was a nervous man. He got paid the checking his watch and glancing at the perimeter of the yard. He gave me the keys the door. Keep the door locked? He said. We have sensors on the windows. The alarm code is 4498. Is the airy dangerous? I asked it. He hesitated. Not dangerous, just populated. There are folks in these hills who do not have addresses. Tractors, they see a light on, they get curious. Just keep the blinds down at night and do not engage. They get at the hat you one who comes at the drive. Do not engage. That stuck with me. Health around 4 p.m. By 6 p.m., the sun was gone behind the ridge, and the cabin became a fishbowl. That is the problem with floor-to-ceiling windows in the wilderness. When the lights are on inside, you cannot see anything outside. The glass just becomes a black mirror, but everything outside can see you perfectly. The first night was uneventful, but I slept poorly. The house made noises. Pops, creaks, the grinding of timber settling in the cold. Every time the refrigerator hummed to life, I jumped scared. The second night is when it started. It was 11:30 p.m. I was sitting on the couch reading with a single lamp on. I got up to go to the kitchen till Gadaklis of waiter. As he walked past the massive glass wall facing the backyard, I glanced out. Usually it was just black reflection, but this time my eyes caught a description in the darkness. About 50 yards out, right at the edge of the tree line, something was reflecting the light from the cabin. It was pale. I stopped and caught Miss my hands against the glass to block the glare. There was a man standing there. He was standing perfectly still. He was wearing dark clothes, but his face was pale, almost luminous in the gloom. He was not looking at the house in a general sense. He was looking directly at me. My heart hammered. I remembered Mr. Vance's warning. Drifter. I grabbed my phone to call 911, but when I looked at the screen, I had 0 bars. The Wi-Fi was working, but cell service was dead. I opened the keypad to his dial and away, hoping the emergency signal would punch through, but I hesitated. What was I going to say? He's a guy standing in the woods. He was not on the property technically. He was just watching, and decided to close the blinds. It took me a minute to find the cord for the massive electronic shades. As slowly lowered, buzzing mechanically, I watched him. He did not move. He did not flinch. Had just watched the barrier come down. I slept with the kitchen knife on the night. The third night, I prepared myself. I kept the lights off in the main room so I could see out without being seen. I sat in the corner of the loft, peering down through the upper windows. At 10 p.m. he came back, but hey, was not it the tree line? He was standing in the middle of the yard, 20 yards from the back deck. You could see him clearly now. He was tall, skinny. His clothes looked too big for him, hanging off his frame like grass. And his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, like his neck was broken, resting his arm on his shoulder. He took a step forward, then another. His movement was jerky, uncoordinated. I felt a surge of adrenaline. This was trespassing. This was a threat. I went downstairs and flipped on the flat. The backyard exploded in bright white LED light. I expected him to run. I expected him to show his ease. He did neither. He just stood there, both in the light, blinking slowly. His eyes were wide, too wide, and he was smiling. It was a tight, lip smile that teased his eyes. I caught the force of the glass. I have a gun. Get off the property. I did not have a gun. He did not react to my voice. Peaches raised it on hand pointed. Not at me, but at the front door. I spun around looking at the heavy wooden front door behind me. It was locked. That ball did. When he looked back at the yard, the light flickered. Once, twice. And they died. Sigh. The yard went pitch black. I scrambled backward, knocking over a chair. I grabbed the land phone in the kitchen. That tone. Of course. I retreated to the bathroom in the center of the house. It was the only room with no windows. I locked the door, curled it up in the bathtub, and waited. I heard footsteps on the back decks. Heavy bootfalls on the woods. Clumped. Handle tapping on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. It was rhythmic, playful. Hand, a voice. It was muffled by the thick glass, but I could hear it. Lemon, Isage. It sounded like a young boy. I am hurt. Please, let me in. I knew what I saw. That was no young boy. That was a grown man with a broken neck. Go away. I screamed. My leg is broken, the voice said, shifting pitch. Now it sounded like an old woman. Help me, son. Just open the door. The mimicry was the worst part. It clouds through a voice. A child. A woman. A dipper man's voice. All of them asking for entry. All of them sounding desperate. I stayed in that bathtub for 6 hours. Around Tiamat, the power to the house was cut. The bathroom fans died. The lights went out. The silence rushed in. The tapping stopped. The voice stopped. But then he heard the sound that woke me. It was the sound of the keypad on the front door. Beep, 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 beep. Solomon was punching in numbers. I held my breath. Mr. Vance had said the code was 4498. I heard the beep. Another beep. Then a loud, low tone. Incorrect code A. Silence. Ten the game. Beep. Bib. Beep. B. Incorrect code. He was guessing. Or he was learning. This went in for an hour. He would try a combination, fail, wait, and try again. He was not smashing the glass. He was not kicking the door. He wanted to come in the right way. He wanted to be invited or to solve the puzzle. Finally, as the sun began to rise, the beeping stopped. I waited until broad daylight, until I saw a tubble deliver driving up the main road way down in the valley, before it left the Ballard. I ran to my car. The tires were slashed, all four of them. Did not care. I drove on the rims. I drove the set and down the gravel driveway, sparks flying, the metal whining and screaming the whole way. I drove 3 miles on shredded rubber until we reached the county store. I called Mr. Vance from the store's phone. "You need to come back," it said, hysterical. Someone trying to break in. He caught the power. He slashed at my tires. There was a long silence on the other end. "Did you open the door?" Mr. Vance asked. His voice was dead calm. "Not worried about me. Not worried about the house." "No," I said. "Of course not." "Good," he said. "And he cannot stay. Leave the keys at the store. I will find someone else." He hung up. I never went back with my stuff. I left my class, my books, my laptop. I left it all in that cabin. I found out later that the previous houses had gone missing. He said he had wandered off into the woods. But, he didn't wander off. I think he opened the door. And now, sometimes, when I am alone in my apartment in the city, and the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear tapping on my window. And a voice, sounding just like mine, whispering, "Let me in." Those are just 3 accounts from the thousands of miles of deep wilderness that surround us. Well, it's to think that we have conquered nature. We pave roads through it, we build cabins with high-speed internet in it, and we hike through it with GMP's truckers strapped to our wrist. But the Appalachian Mountains are a reminder that some places are not meant to be conquered. They are only meant to be survived. The delivery driver, the hiker, and the health assistant are all made out of, but they paid a price. They lost their sense of safety. They lost the ability to look at a tree line without wondering vacant Hadate is watching from the other side. They learned that the silence of the woods is not peace. It is patience. So the next time you find yourself on a lonely road in West Virginia or camping alone in the North Carolina pines, remember the rules. Do not trust the electronics. Do not trust the voice. And no matter what you hear or who you think is calling your name, never, ever whistle back. If you went to Keithy's Lost Haven, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Reality Locks. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe,